guys, it's Quinlan. Welcome back to my channel. Today, my mom will be talking about her favorite book, which is Fireborn by Rosario Munda. So I actually picked this book up originally because it was about dragons, but my favorite parts of the book and my mom's favorite parts of the book ended up not really being about the dragons at all. And if you want a brief summary, it's basically about this world where there are obviously dragons, but there are the elite who can ride the dragons, and then there are kind of like the serfs who are basically like servants, and they work the land and they serve the elites. And then there's a slave rebellion, so all of the kind of serfs and all of the under people, they all rebel against the elites. And then there's a new republic that they found, which is supposedly based off of merit. So then the highest people who pass this test can finally ride the dragons and protect the republic. But within the story, there is some talk about a growing rebellion back from the former elites. And so it's basically about the conflict between the two, and a lot of it is actually end up being about the society and about kind of the benefits and drawbacks of this type of society. And my mom will go into it more, but this is a spoiler-free review, so even if you haven't read it, you should still stick around, and my mom will talk about why this is her favorite YA book of all time and why you should definitely read it.
Well, first I'm going to just give a little bit of background about myself. I've always been a reader. I loved reading growing up, so it's great that Quinlan is also enjoying reading. I also wanted to mention I also was interested in this book because of dragons. When I was in high school, I read the Anne McCaffrey books about Pern and the dragon riders of Pern and so forth, and really enjoyed those. And so I think, I was like, oh, dragons, that'll be fun. Now I don't have that much time for reading, but the reason that I actually picked this up wasn't because it was about dragons, but because we were taking a family trip. We're going skiing, so I didn't bring very many books because I figured we're skiing all day, then, I'll just have a little bit of time before I fall asleep. So I didn't bring many books, but I actually got really sick instead. So I wasn't going out skiing. I was sleeping a lot, but I was also, when I wasn't sleeping, I wanted to read. So I quickly went through my reading material. And so I asked Quinlan, do you have anything I might be interested in? And so she's the one who was like, well, I brought this to read. And she hadn't read it yet either, so she didn't really know. But I was like, dragons, it should be fun, right? But I think I was probably surprised that I just really, really loved it. So it wasn't just like, well, a nice little diversion while I'm sick. I just got very quickly immersed into the world. Of course, the dragons are fun and interesting, but the characters were really interesting. There was good character development, and it has an engaging plot. But yeah, what really attracted me, all of that made it very engaging. But then the deeper questions really caught me and got me thinking throughout. And I was like, wow, this is a really good book because it works on at least two levels. Where it's kind of a fun plot, and then it has these deeper questions about society, things like self-interest and family loyalty versus, the good of the greater society. Also, like with revolution, when things are horrible, is the violence of the revolution worth it? And so forth. And so I really loved it because of those deeper questions. And when I finished the book, I immediately went online to see, is there a sequel? Because I really wanted to read more. And I'm not somebody who's reading a lot of YA. I'm not reading a lot because I don't have a lot of time, but I immediately wanted to read the sequel, which it's not out yet, sorry. Though she's working on one apparently. Also, when I went online, found out that she had based this society on Plato's Republic. So I was like, oh, no wonder it seemed kind of deep. It's from those ancient Greek philosophers. But this is a great way to think of those same questions I think that Plato was asking, but in a much more fun and kind of accessible format. So that's why I really loved the book, and I really recommend it for everybody, young adults and older adults as well. So enjoy.
So I didn't really mention it earlier, but our two main protagonists are Leo and Annie, who are both dragon riders, but who come from very different backgrounds. Leo is one of the last kind of elite from the families, but he was spared during the rebellion because he was very young. And Annie came from a serf family, so she was kind of the lowest of the low, but she ended up rising up through the ranks to become a dragon rider. So it is very fascinating to see the dynamic between the two characters who have very different backgrounds, but ended up in the same place. and to see kind of some of the resentment that they have towards their society, because obviously one lost everything, and yes, one gained everything, but previous to that they had almost nothing, and Annie's family suffered a lot at the hands of dragons and the dragon riders. So it's an interesting kind of dynamic to see the two interact with their society and with each other. So I definitely think it's a super interesting concept. Another aspect of the story that interests me was the Department of Propaganda that was part of the government, because it was a deeply ingrained part of society, and I do think that comes straight from Plato's Republic. But what really intrigued me about that is how different the society is from our own, because we do tend to think of our society as merit-based, although there definitely is obviously a very obvious class system, and there obviously are huge advantages to being born wealthy. But in this society, supposedly everything is completely merit-based, but there are also definitive propaganda ministries, and they interact with each of the kind of classes that you can test into differently, which is super interesting in my opinion, because it kind of asks new questions about the morality of propaganda and upholding morale in the society, because you kind of wonder, you know, is it worth it for the good of all people to kind of have a very united front, even if you're lying to certain people? And they hide the truth of how violent the rebellion was, and they kind of idealize it. When they look back on society, they have parades to celebrate kind of the day that everything was overthrown. But it does kind of beg the question, you know, should you really hide stuff like this from your people in society? Because, for example, in our society, I know there are definitely schools that, for example, ban books and stuff like that. But there are also schools, and I think majority of schools, who teach America's history as it really was, you know, with all of the bad parts still involved. And I think that, again, it's very interesting. For example, if we had been given a sugar-coated version of America, I don't think that's anything anybody would want. I don't think anyone would advocate for that, but it does make for like a different type of society. And so when you're reading this book, you do wonder, oh, would that be better necessarily? As a citizen, you might say no, but as a leader, you might say yes. And so I just think those are some more of the interesting questions that this book poses.
Earlier, Quinlan mentioned that they give a test, and then people's occupations are completely determined by how well or how poorly they do on that test. And as she said, it's supposed to be merit-based. So, you know, the test is supposed to really show like what kind of occupation you would be best suited for. But we do find out in the book that the people who formerly were like the merchant class and so forth, somehow their kids always do well on this test. And the kids from other strata of society, the lower strata of society, do not do so well on the test. So while some rise up, as Quinlan mentioned, one main character, Annie, is from the lowest stratum of society and is training to become a dragon rider, highest in the new society, but there's not as much movement as the idea of a meritocratic test would suggest. So that's part of the interesting part about society. How much is meritocratic and how much is still your background, because those people were still starting out with more resources, more knowledge of, you know, how the system works or how to do well on the test, things like that, which of course is applicable to our current society today.
Okay guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please comment down below and feel free to subscribe if you like to see more videos like this. And also definitely comment if you want to see more favorites from my mom, whether they be young adult, or if you just want to see her in more videos. Let me know. So thank you so much for watching. Bye!